Candace Owens is saying they are after her and they are trying to destroy her career, and also they basically want her off the YouTube. She, of course, never says what she means by they or those people. But I think with today, in today's episode of the Daily Objective, we'll try to make an educated guess about who she means when she says that. So, as some of you might have caught in, she had an interview with Tristan Tate. So a few weeks ago, she had an interview with Andrew Tate. Now she had an interview with Tristan Tate. Both of them are definitely sex traffickers. So it's interesting that people like that is, or people like those is someone who she's willing to invite on her podcast. But actually, that wasn't even really the problem. No one is really focusing on the fact that those people are sex traffickers. What they are focusing more is the anti-Semitism that was expressed, especially in the Tristan Tate episode. So we will be talking about that, and also I think the episode was brought down. I couldn't find it on her channel. I'm not sure if she took it down, or if she was forced to take it down, or YouTube took it down because people were mass reporting her, at least from what I understand. But so we'll go through our tweet. Joining me today is James. Hey James, how are you doing?
I am doing pretty good. Wow. So Candace is how many anti-Semitic cliches, tropes has she bought into? How
All of
many?
them.
Yeah. I mean, the woman cannot help but, I mean, for her, one of the founders of Zionism was a Frankist cultist or something. And so she's got all these bizarre theories about the Jews in general. And so when she uses phrases, the ADL, the Anti-Defense League, very famous organization that has been operative for many decades, all of my life, they take a very pro-Israel stance and obviously a strong stance against anti-Semitism. I don't always agree with them, but when it comes to defending Israel and being against anti-Semitic hate crimes, I'm for them. But she's apparently being criticized by the Anti-Defamation League. Well, Candace, you ought to have expected that Jewish groups would push back against all of your ridiculous, bizarre, unhinged conspiracy theories about Jews. And then she backs up and calls the attack on her they, them, they, them. Now, wait a minute here. All my life, I've also known, although I've been aware of the Anti-Defense League being the most important lobby group against anti-Semitism in my country, I've been aware of them all my life. And I've been aware of lots of Jewish people who are not supporters of ADL and their positions on things. Has she ever heard of Finkelstein? Has she ever heard of, so when you talk about Jews in this giant collective way, they and they and they, that is racism, ladies and gentlemen. That is collectivism. That is, swooping all the members of a giant group, of a really giant group, and judging them collectively like that in the most irrational, tribalistic way you can imagine.
Yeah, so we'll go through her tweet or X, I don't know what to call it now. But first of all, so we did episode on Candace Owens, I think about week and a half ago. It was Razi and Michael, and a lot of people in the chat, or at least I've seen some people saying in the chat, we didn't debunk anything of what she said. And I think in some way it probably was true, but I think one thing you have to realize is a claim with no evidence should be dismissed with no evidence. You don't, if, again, many of her claims, in a sense, even couldn't be really demolished. If she says, there was this cult in this area and there was this person who also grew up in this area, there's no way to basically dismiss what she's saying. When you just do this, isn't it weird that it is pretty much undismissible, or pretty much should be dismissed? And I think when it comes to, you also mentioned that, or at least I basically mentioned that she seems to believe in all conspiracy theories, which I think makes sense. Once you start accepting, once you, in a sense, refuse reality and pretty much take anything for take anything someone says as this could be true, then yeah, you will accept everything. You will accept flat earth, you will accept that Jews are behind everything.
Yeah, when she did the attack on the very idea that Mengele had done medical experiments in the Nazi concentration camps, that was vile and disgusting. And I may have made a mistake in that episode by actually giving scholarly evidence. And as I recall, I provided a link in the thing to a book that included both historians giving the factual evidence as well as personal statements from survivors of those medical experiments, firsthand testimony. And there I did it. I may have made a mistake in trying to refute her. Let me put that in italics. You say you didn't in the last Candace episode. You didn't debunk anything she said. She is beneath debunking. First, you cannot, it's a huge mistake, as you point out, Daniel, to even respond to an arbitrary, baseless assertion for which there's no evidence in the first place. But if something is so out of bounds, something like, questioning whether or not there were medical experiments on children during the Holocaust, then it is perhaps I am the one who made the epistemological error in even trying to refute her with a scholarly citation, because some things are so awful and so obviously false. See, take her general epistemology. She's not, strictly speaking, a flat earther. She's just open to the, I'm not a flat earther, I'm not a round earther. I just know that science is a cult. What? And then she'll say, I wish I was making up these things that she said. She's actually publicly said the kinds of things that I've just said. And when you get to that point, when you're open-minded about the flat earth theory, when you're saying, no, the Mengele, it's absurd to think that there were medical experiments on children during the Holocaust, you crossed a line. And I was the one, perhaps, who made a mistake to even try to debunk her. She's easily debunked on the medical experiment thing. She would be easily debunked on flat earth. But it's so easy that she's off in a different category of epistemology, and it's probably, whether it's strictly speaking arbitrary or not, it may be an error to try and logically refute her rather than do what we're doing here. She's got a huge audience. Uh, so she needs some addressing in some fashion. So I'm not questioning what we're doing here, but what we're doing here is criticizing the madness of it. And I hope we'll get to also discussing her claims, her fretting about being canceled in in this world run by Jews and homosexuals. I guess she's afraid of being canceled. Well, being deplatformed by YouTube, say, because the Anti-Defamation League catches you saying horrible anti-Semitic things. Well, that's a private organization, YouTube. They have a right to have their
Yeah,
own.
we'll go to that. I
Yeah.
just want to actually read her tweet so
Oh yeah,
we
let's do
have at
that.
least something.
Yeah.
But I just quickly say also something that happens when you have such an epistemology. Basically, when you start accepting the arbitrary, there's also no evidence you can provide. You can say, for example, with the Mengele case, you can show, well, these are the people that went through this. These are, let's say the documents. Nazis were pretty good at like keeping documents, so we have a lot of them because of it. We have these documents. She would just say, well, that could have been faked. These people are paid. Once you accept the arbitrary, there's no. You
Right.
can only argue with someone if the basis for both of you is reality. But once that is no longer the case, again, there is no way to debunk it. But let's read her actual tweet. So she says, I'm creating this thread so that everything that is happening is well documented in the public. Yesterday, the Anti-Defamation League added me to what can only be described as an effective hit list. They personally emailed reporters at major publications with a long set of smears about me, plus provided these reporters with a list of my show advertisers. This morning, my advertisers began receiving emails such as below, and there are we can also go through the email, but basically the email just mostly says, something like, just so you're aware, Candace Owens is person who says these things. And they posted 3 articles with what I'd say many of them were simply summarizing what Candace Owens has said. One of them was basically the Mendeleev example we brought up, that she was, there's I think there is like a actual, a question, when it comes to either the Mendeleev experiments or, things that were happening during the Second World War. I think there is a genuine, you could have like, oh, how do we know that these things happen? Like, I think there is sort of like a genuine questions you could ask, like, how do we know 6 million Jews have died, for example? Like, I think if you are someone who's genuinely interested, I think there is a case for it. But when these people do it, and now I'm using these people, but when people like Candace Owens or these conspiracy theorists use it, the way they do it, well, isn't it weird that Mendeleev did these things? She's not actually looking for truth. She's not actually looking to find out what has happened. What she said, she just wants to pretty much say, well, isn't it weird that the number is exactly 6 million, not one more, not one less? Isn't it weird? She is using these sort of arguments to basically put a doubt on basically this information instead of actually trying to look for the truth. And so to that, I would say she called them smears. It's not a smear if they just show what you have said. It's on you on what has changed, what you have said. You should take some accountability, or basically take, if you are confident in these things you should say, I'm saying these things, but don't hide for it. She's pretty much trying to hide from what she has said. But James, what do you think?
Well, one could say that her comments are smearing Jews and Zionists. And so I would turn right around to Miss Owen. I would say, wait a minute here. You're the one doing the smearing. You're the one trying to do the canceling. You're the one in effect. Now, as you point out, if she's, and in this case, if they really are lying about her and contacting her advertisers, why, my dear Miss Owen, you would have a hell of a defamation case there. If you can show economic harm from someone lying about you, then you can take them to court, get damages, stop them from doing it. But she points out they're going after her advertisers. Well, there's a gimme defamation case. If Miss Owen, they are lying about you, and all you would have to do is prove that the Anti-Defamation League was lying about you, and she could win her defamation case. And we have protections against being lied about when it causes actual economic harm of the kind that she's claiming that they're trying to cause on her. But no, if they're telling the truth, as you point out, then of course, even if they're going to her advertisers, they're doing something perfectly legal. They have free speech, just as you have free speech. Your advertisers have freedom of association, just as you have freedom of association. And if I tell the truth about someone and someone decides to no longer do business with you or no longer be your friend, well, guess what? It's their freedom, that person's freedom of speech and freedom of association that matters. Free speech means I have a right to say negative things about other people. I can even say offensive things about other people. That's what free speech consists of. And as I was saying earlier, I mean, if a private platform decides to, quote, censor, it's not censorship at all. That's just, if someone walked into my living room and started yelling communist propaganda at me, kicking them out of my living room is not violating their freedom of speech. It's protecting my private property rights. And similarly, YouTube is private property. And she can't demand of them anything either. They have a private platform. They can use their own standards. So long as the government isn't threatening them. Now, we've heard allegations of things like that. Biden would call up in fact, Zuckerberg has recently revealed this. Biden would call up, and when you've got pending antitrust legislation or pending legislation before Congress, and they sort of threaten you if you don't eliminate now, that's censorship. But if it's not a threat coming from the government for legal action, it cannot be censorship. That's freedom. Canceling is freedom of speech, freedom of association. People obviously do have motives, Miss Owen, but you know something? If people hear you say, well, maybe the earth is flat, even if it's just a maybe the earth is flat, and to decide to dismiss your judgment as unhinged, they're using perfectly rational standards for who they're going to trust and who they're going to listen to, Miss Owen. So you know something, you better be careful about what you say, Miss Owen. You will face the natural consequences of being shunned by rational people, of losing customers, of being deplatformed by private platforms. And that's not censorship. And what you call canceling is what I call freedom and freedom of speech and freedom of association. These conservatives who talk cancel culture are crazy. How the hell do we make cultural intellectual progress if people who still have an open mind about the flat earth aren't ridiculed for being the anti-science, anti-reason people that they are, or people questioning whether Mengele. Now you're right. If I'm a young student and I'm studying German history and I say, wait a minute, how do we know it was around 6 million? How do we know that there were medical experiments on children in the concentration camps, etc.? In the first instance, that's a very valid epistemological claim. Let me show you the photographs of the Russian and American and British soldiers who came into these concentration camps first. Let me give you the firsthand witness testimonies. Let me show you the medical reports on the survivors and the corpses. Let me show you the piles of eyeglasses and shoes that were found from victims. And let me tell you about what they found in the gas chambers out of Auschwitz. Now, when in the face of all that evidence, you say, okay, you question the actual evidence. Now you're the one being irrational. It's overwhelming evidence that was even tried in international courts at Nuremberg in war crimes trials that lasted through the 50s. It is well established, well documented. And once you've gotten that initial evidence, then to just arbitrarily say, well, why would someone do medical experiments on children? What a cruel, isn't that unlikely that a normal human being would do such? Yeah, it is unlikely but guess what? There's solid evidence, physical evidence, photographs, survivor reports, medical reports. And without it considering that kind of evidence, saying, well, who would do such a thing is perfectly arbitrary. It's wrong to even start arguing with them because, as you say, they could just keep with the arbitrary possibilities. Well, maybe the evidence that you saw was, it gets to be like these people who think that the moon landing was faked. Well, maybe it was a big Hollywood set, and maybe, and you could keep inventing the maybes forever. Maybe it was a bunch of actors. Maybe it was maybe. And yeah, maybe whatever. That's arbitrary. You cannot even consider that. And attempting to refute it is impossible. Non-existence leaves no traces. The absence of evidence is enough to say, I'm not going to consider that. And if you do go down the path of her making up evidence, pulling it out of the thin blue sky, then what you're doing is you're committing a fallacy. You're going down her fallacious line of reasoning in considering even arbitrary possibilities, as you point out. But no, freedom isn't understood. Logic isn't understood here.
Yeah, and we'll go into that because pretty much the next line is talking about that. But again, I think it is just so anti-man and anti-science, but she is openly anti-science, so that's not surprising.
It's a
But
cult.
sort of, yeah, we had a introduction, we had a history of astronomy course many months ago, and one of the sessions was about how do we know, or how did the humanity learn that the Earth is spherical. It's not round technically because it's not a perfect round, but it's spherical. And yeah, it didn't happen like last 100 years ago, 200 years ago. It happened thousands of years ago. There is, even you could find out, and there is, you could inductively learn. You don't have to go into outer space. We didn't confirm that the Earth is spherical when we went to outer space. We knew it much sooner, and very precise. To I think the first calculations that were made were not far away from how far it actually was. And the only reason why it was off is because of you have different as I said, it's not like perfect round circle ball.
Over 2,000 years ago, a Greek scientist comparing shadows in different places in Egypt actually calculated reasonably accurately the actual circumference of the Earth. It's absolutely astonishing, but you can do it with your own observations, looking at the sky, looking at shadows. Well, today we've got all, I have a video chat on Zoom with a friend in a different continent, and I see the sun is going down where he is, and it's not going down where I am. I have good reason to believe that the Earth is curved. But more than that, there's all kinds of great evidence that you yourself can observe just by looking at the sky, looking at shadows on the ground, that could tell you all kinds of things about the Earth. You don't even need the photographs we now have from outer space. Now, many, many, many photographs from many, many trips to outer space. Consider just how irrational you have to be, just how much evidence you have to ignore, just how anti-reason you have to be to even entertain something like the Flat Earth Society. Or the Flat Earth theories. There's a Flat Earth Society, which is astonishing to me. But when you think about that, obviously the woman should be utterly dismissed. She should not have the millions of people that follow her. No one should be listening to a damn thing this woman says. She is completely epistemologically out to lunch. No one should trust her judgment. At all, for the very grounds that would get her just to the flat earth. Forget the Mengele and science experiments. Forget the conspiracy theories about the origins of Zionism. When you add that all up, obviously her judgment gets to the point where you might think, as we have speculated here, that the woman might have mental issues. Literally, what she believes is so bizarre and so far gone that I really think maybe only a therapist can get to the bottom of what's troubling her cognitively here, because she's that far out to lunch. She's out in another dimension in her own fantasy world. So yeah, she should be ridiculed. She should be ridiculed, and the ridiculing of her, or the YouTube is, no, this is too bizarre. I'm sorry, we're deplatforming this nonsense. That's not censorship. And if
Yeah.
people
So
listen,
let's actually, because we have a long tweet
sorry,
still. But
okay.
someone in the chat says globe heads are anti-science. Thank you for your input. But continuing with the Candace Owens tweet or X, she says, yeah, make no mistake that we are witnessing the behavior of mafia. I wanted to read a bit more, but we have to comment on this. Again, it's a complete misunderstanding. And she uses a lot of concepts, she uses a lot of words in the whole of tweet, and all of them are so misused, like beyond any sort of like reasonableness. Again, mafia. What is a mafia? Mafia is a either it's a party that completely takes over a certain geographical area to the point of replacing the role, basically the rule of law and the rule of government, and basically completely replaces them, or it's someone who has a major political power, which means the power of force, meaning that she is saying that Anti-Defamation League basically has the power of government behind them, and that them, again, it's not like even they are kicking her off from something. They're just recommending to companies to basically deplatform her for what she's saying. Again, comparing that to someone coming into your house, putting a gun against your head and saying you have to get out of get off the internet, and I'm gonna destroy your internet. Again, she is using these concepts so improperly to basically invoke something that it's not, to basically drive emotions, basically saying mafia is coming. I mean, what did she say at the start? ADL put her on effective hit list. When I saw that, I was like, are they coming to
Yeah.
kill her?
Well, that's what mafias do. They hire hitmen take someone out, to assassinate them, to kill them. They use murder, they use violence, they use intimidation, threats. They'll break your legs. You don't pay us back, we're going to break your legs. They threaten people. It's a protection racket. There's the classic, the mafia guy comes in and says, yeah, it's a nice shop you got here. Knock something over. Shame if something ever happened to it. Now pay up the protection money. It's an
Yeah.
extortion racket.
I wish I could make like a reference to a Godfather, but I've never seen the movies. But I'm trying to imagine. Imagine if, the way she's thinking about it, in a Godfather, or in some mafia movie, someone would like come to her, and I cannot even imagine what it would be, but basically saying, not even going to her, going to someone else and saying, oh yeah, don't let her into your shop. And she's viewing that in the same way as you described, someone saying, it'd be shame if something were happen to you or your family. Like,
Mafia, the big Hollywood studio boss, in order to force him to make a casting decision, they cut off the head of his prize racehorse and put it in his bed. So the big Hollywood producer wakes up with a horse head in his bed. It's a horrifying scene. That's the mafia. Now, someone telling you what Candace actually said is doing them a service, whatever their opinion ends up being. If I'm informing you, did you know that Candace Owens said this? How is that threatening? How is that intimidating? How is that doing anything but telling the truth, increasing the information base? Before you do business with Candace, you might want to know that she's just doesn't believe in Mengele. She doesn't. She questions the round Earth idea. Just for your own information's sake. No, people are better off the more they know about Candace. And Candace, when people tell the truth about you, they are not using force against you. They are telling the truth and spreading facts about you. They are not acting like a mafia. They're doing just the opposite. They're acting like educators. They're acting like a responsible media that informs people. And if people have a negative reaction because of what you said, it's because of what you said, Miss Owen. And they have a right to do that and not do business with you or deplatform you or just not listen to you at all. They have rights too, Miss Owen. And if you're the one who pulls out the gun, if you're the one who says that legally you're going to take steps against them, you're the mafia, Miss Owen. So, no, these are just words, Miss Owen. These are private platforms. Get all that mafia and force talk out of your head, because that's not what we're talking about here. It's people spreading the truth about you, and they have every right to do so.
yeah, I can just imagine, the mafia came in and they gave her the offer she can refuse. Like,
Just
but
that's the classic line from the movie. Yeah, we'll make her an offer she can't refuse.
she can refuse.
She can refuse.
Because
Well,
this is what it
oh,
actually is.
yeah.
But something, a point I always like to make. I'm very much like anti-privacy, but like only personally, not like revealing someone else's privacy. But I always say, the more people know more about me, the better I look. So I don't care if more people find more about me, but it's people like her that who are afraid of like more like
Mm.
she she should be wanting, basically, if she believes in her thing, she should want basically more people knowing about her. Uh,
Right. Doesn't she want these ideas spread? And if they're telling other people what she's saying, isn't this further dissemination of her ideas? Yeah, uh, free speech is never hurt with more speech. Even if you lie about me, I'll take the opposite. Now, if it harms me, I can sue you for defamation if I can prove the harm. But you know something? John Stuart Mill was right about this. The truth, for the truth to really be properly understood, strongly and defended, and strongly understood, we need the freedom to say nonsense. And people need to be able to say, hey, that's nonsense. That's how human progress gets made, is by the discussion of this, by sharing people's ideas, by discussing, say, the controversial things Candace Owens is saying, and people have their own freedom to react, to disagree, to denounce you, to call you an idiot, to deplatform you, to stop watching you.
So continuing with her tweet, she says, "This mafia has used a network of smears to try to get me banned from." Again, I'll post the tweet in the description later. But so she shared a couple of pictures. One of them, I should have pointed out sooner. One of them was specifically, I think there is like a Zionist organization in Australia, basically advocating for the Australian government to deny her any visas. I think that is probably too much. Especially, I believe in a sense, no borders, or at least no visas, pretty much open borders with like little to none screening, and even that is for just when it comes to a potential security threat, or if they had a disease or something like that.
Exactly.
But
Some physical harm threat. She is no physical threat, no immediate physical threat to Australia. And in my view, immigration laws should not restrict people, peaceful, non-physically threatening
yeah,
people should be free
so
to go back and forth and migrate without visas at all. And so,
yeah,
yeah, I'm against Australia taking that
so
step.
that specifically I would mind, but again, it's not really the focus that she's focusing. She is focusing much more on ADL than this
Well,
Australian
governments can
Zionist
act like
organization.
mafias. Governments can act like mafias. Private organizations who are not threatening any physical force or coercion are not like mafias.
Yeah, and
Distinction
again,
draw.
so she posted the picture of the emails that people are sending, but it's basically just, just so you are aware, Candace Owens is this person, and they share 3 articles which are just covering. And again, it's not like you get that email and immediately, you don't even have free will, and you immediately like act in a certain way. Again, you can go through these articles, and you can make a better informed decisions. What Candace wants is for these platforms to not make informed decisions about her.
To silence them, to tear their tongues out so that they can't tell the truth about her, I guess, from their perspective. She hasn't been the subject of any of my emails, at least I don't think so. But if I had ever mentioned it, she would be very unhappy with my emails. I'm sure she would think I'm part of some kind of mafia because I'm telling people, she thinks the world might be flat, or, she doubts Mengele and the scientific experiments during the Holocaust. If I said things like that, which is what I would say in emails, she would say that I guess I'm part of a mafia smearing her. No, no, I'm telling my friends the truth about you, Candace, and I have a right to do that. That's not threatening force. That's not coercing you. That's giving people information on which they can make their own decisions about your judgment and state of mind, Miss Owen.
Yeah, James, you would say that. Aren't you an objectivist founded by Ayn Rand, or rather, I should say, Alisa Rosenbaum? Isn't it kind of weird that you're part of this movement founded by a Jewish person? I'm
Oh, it's
channeling my.
true. I've been sucked into, I admire Ayn Rand was an atheist, by the way. But in any case, I admire many intellectuals who come from Jewish backgrounds, like Ayn Rand and Leonard Peikoff and Ludwig von Mises and Harry Binswanger. Okay, so does that make me part of some international Jewish conspiracy to get Candace Owen? No, no, no. I mean, it's utterly bizarre. And in fact, putting it that way is another thing I would put in my email. Do you know she actually regards people who admire Jewish intellectuals as ... if she ever said such a thing? No, it's part of her, part and parcel with her obvious anti-Semitism. This woman has racist attitudes towards Jews. You can see them sneaking out here, there, like pressure under, steam escaping, and you can just see it constantly. She's spouting steam, and it's usually ugly, gross, racist, anti-Semitic cliches and tropes.
But James, many of her best friends are Jews, so I don't think that's a problem.
Well,
By
that
the
should
way,
get us to
James,
think that maybe they aren't a collective that can all be judged collectively, like
uh,
racists do.
I'd like to finish the tweet, but we are already 5 minutes over. James, do you want to
No,
go a bit over?
sure.
Yeah,
Let's finish your
okay.
tweet.
So she also said, continuing with the mafia, providing a public step-by-step guide for how to mass report my account. Again, I would just say, they're just providing information how to do it, because I actually don't really know how to report an account. I imagine it's not that hard. This mafia is also targeting my speaking events by mass spamming my hosts via emails with threats. So she didn't share anything like that, so I have no idea what like threats mean. Uh, and again, so she is implying this is ADL. So she is saying, I could imagine some like activists, saying, if you invite Candace Owens, we will come to protest at your public gathering or something like that. But again, she is implying this is ADL. She's saying mafia. So if she is implying this is ADL doing it, she should definitely sue. At
All
least from
the
this perspective. But again, if it's like random people doing it, again, I don't think you can automatically like blame ADL for it. And again, you could target the specific people if you believe in that. But again, if people wanna protest your public gathering, again, that's a bit problematic if it's like a public space and the way it's organized. If it's, if it's a private event, then yeah, you definitely don't have a right to like barge in and try to stop it by force. But if it's at some university, you could probably like protest outside at least, I think so. But again, it would very much depend on the specific issue. But again, it's not something she deals with. She is this sort of like blacky check, anyone protesting my appearance is automatically wrong.
Anyone complaining about me, emailing about me, saying that now say this word threat that she uses, threats. What threats? If it's a threat of physical harm, she can call the police. Someone is threatening my safety. Someone is threatening to beat me up. Someone is threatening to kill me or do a terrorist action at my speech. If someone is, let's say the threat is against to do an illegal protest, not a legal protest, as you were pointing out that distinction. Those are actual criminal actions. She can call the police. We have laws that protect us against those kind of, quote, threats. If they're making threats of crime or violence, call the police. Call the police. It was not a situation where their threats consist of, hey, we will ban you. We will call the advertisers. We will, not show up to your speech, or we'll have people protesting, maybe in a lawful, legal way. If it's illegal, like you say, call the police. Call the police. Are you permitted? Is it violent? Do you have the permission of the property owners to be there? Are you going to be there interfering with the business there? Because that would be a threat that the police can come in and enforce about. There's a vague use of the word threats, but it appears from the way I'm reading the thing, the way she uses the word threat means telling people about what I've said, summarizing my opinion, telling my advertisers, potentially getting my advertisers to pull out, getting people not to watch me, getting maybe YouTube to consider deplatforming me. Well, Miss Owen, that's not criminal threatening behavior. That's freedom of speech. Get over it. And you have an impact with your words. They can have an impact with their words.
Yeah, and again, it's this sort of muddying waters, like just putting the threat in, sort of implying the physical aspect, the physical force, and keeping, still saying, these people. Because again, I haven't seen, she shared pictures of emails. I didn't see any like explicit threats there. So if she has anything like that, she should definitely share it. I'll defend her. I'd say, if it is actually something that is breaking a law, then yeah, obviously. But
Right.
again, she is trying to imply this sort of like breaking law, like her rights being targeted. But what actually is happening is, platforms are exercising their First Amendment, or platforms are exercising their property rights. So again, if there are threats, she should deal with them in the proper way, basically calling the police. If there are none, then yeah, it
Well, you
might
threaten
suck.
her
We
feeling.
got banned from TikTok. It sucks. You have to just move on.
Right. Right. You just move on. TikTok is TikTok. And you threaten my mental well-being, Daniel, by being critical of my taste in music. I mean, that's not a threat of force or violence or coercion. Look, threatening to call me a bad name. It's not, Ms. Owen, let's distinguish between these threats. You say pretty bloody awful things about Jewish people in Israel. Could we consider that a threat? Well, by your standard, presumably we can call everything you utter a threat against Israel and probably make a far better, more credible case. Israel's fighting for its life right now. Your anti Semitic comments are not helping in their literal physical fight for life with real violent people who are making more than just threats, but lobbing rockets and missiles. So, no, Candace Owen, your anti Semitism is protected by free speech in America. Absolutely, it is. But frankly, it's more of a quote threat than people pointing out the truth of your insane comments. My gosh, she's got everything all upside down and backwards, doesn't she?
So yeah, continuing. At their core, these people are communists. They cannot compete in the free market of ideas. They do not know how to create, so they deceive and they steal. They cannot accept that people are still choosing to listen to me despite the full effort they are waging against me in the press, so they are now moving to try to squeeze me financially. And yeah, here again, I don't think she stands for anything free market. Again, it's this sort of like it's these people who advocate for free market, but what they actually mean is breaking up big companies because they don't like there are big companies. Uh, Again, using communists. Again, this is something I did when I was like 15, like a libertarian. I just called like anyone who like wanted any government to exist a communist. Again, words have meaning, uh,
They do.
and they should be used in their proper way. You could if they were actually pushing for censorship, you could call them they are pushing for censorship. But again,
Censorship. Communism has a
she
very specific meaning. And if what she means is generally improper government force, like you used as a teenager, she's the one who's doing that. She's the one calling for them to be silenced in their criticism of her. And what she calls economic pressure, squeezing me, that is freedom. She says, well, people are still going. What if your advertisers pulled out? Aren't they people? Don't they have judgments? And so what they want is to silence me. No, you want to force your advertisers to continue to support you in ignorance. You want to force YouTube to continue to broadcast your anti Semitic lies. You're the one threatening force. And that's what's even connected to communism. And it sure ain't, the hell ain't yet communism. But the point is, if anyone is using government force, which I will take her communist hyperbole to mean, it's you, Miss Owen, saying that YouTube's must continue to carry my words, whatever they think. My advertisers must be kept in the dark about me and can't exercise their own independent judgment. So this freedom that she says that people still have is precisely what she's attacking. And yeah, I mean, if people do watch her, then presumably she could have all kinds of platforms of her own where if she does have these thousands of fans, they could go follow her, listen to her, buy her newsletter. She could create her own social media platform like Trump did if she had the resources. But the point is that you're the one threatening force, and that's what's commie like in this context. But you're right; words have meaning. We should be
yeah
very careful when we use words like Nazi and communist to
and
mean the real deal.
Yeah, and she also said, deception and stealing. Again, deception, again, saying deception, like, I don't think she knows that words actually have meaning. This is like a new newspeak. Basically, like, deception is when you show people what you say. And again, stealing, I haven't seen, like, again, any case, any, like, even mention of stealing, any way of stealing. I think this last line is pretty much just an anti-Semitic Freudian slip. She's thinking about the Jews, so she immediately just says, "Oh yeah, they're deceiving, they're stealing," with no actual need for provide any evidence of it.
Hmm.
Um,
She's trying to steal social media platforms from the people who created them. She's got it exactly wrong. Oh, and a bunch of those people who were involved in creating the internet were Jewish. How about Mark Zuckerberg or something? My Candace. Wait here. They, it's like the use of the word they when she uses they didn't create. No, wait. They didn't. You didn't create the internet platform. You didn't create the. And so, if she's boasting that somehow she is some, and what did she create? A bunch of lies. And if people, I mean, what is she claiming the creation of? This giant anti Semitic conspiracy theory of hers? That's a creation? What she's saying there is bizarre projection about how she is the one attacking the creators of these values and trying to seize them and control them and so forth. No. What the hell did she create but a bunch of lies?
well, so she also mentioned basically the last line of the tweet is today is Michael Jackson's birthday. That was a few days ago. And media mafia is a topic we're discussing. Nothing to say here. Basically, her new video was about Michael Jackson. But she also had another tweet, which I had to decipher for a little bit of time. Basically, it was a headline saying Israel agrees to pause fighting in Gaza for polio vaccination, says UN official. Apparently, there was a either there was an outbreak of polio in Gaza or a potential outbreak, and I don't know how old this news is, but it looks like Israel might pause fighting for it. But she said her response to that was, did someone ask ChatGPT to generate a headline that would upset Candace Owens the most? This is beyond parody. And I was thinking, why does she have a problem with this? I would assume she, has a problem with, Israel killing babies in Gaza, and she would want the stop to fighting. And then I realized that these like knuckleheads, they now hate all the vaccines. So basically, what she's saying is, Israel is like going to poison children now with the polio vaccination. Again, it's such an like she's so divorced from reality now that yeah, she believes in all the conspiracies. She believes in everything, and yeah, there is also this almost like a confirmation bias. Like anything the Jews do is wrong. So if the Jews want to pause fighting to vaccinate people against polio, then it must be that the polio vaccinations are going to hurt them or
You
something.
know how many Jewish scientists and physicians have been involved in the creation of vaccines? From her perspective, I don't know. Vaccines may not be a giant Zionist conspiracy in themselves. But in reality, of course, I hate to do that with poor Candace. In reality, of course, polio was a deadly disease that killed many, many people and left others paralyzed, crippled, maimed for life. The stories of children being maimed for life, surviving in machine lungs that would have to breathe for them, and then polio vaccine comes along and saves millions. I hero worship the man and the people who gave us the polio vaccine that literally saved millions of children from paralysis and death. And if she is going to be in any way even slightly critical of the polio vaccine, she is an anti-life monster who would be calling for the paralyzing and killing of children, millions of children worldwide. That is the life and death kind of consequences that still believe in her free speech. She should still be free. Now, I still believe in shunning, because if this is what she's actually saying, if she's actually being critical of polio vaccines as such, then she advocates anti-life ideas that people should shun and ridicule. And if she thinks that shunning and ridiculing is a matter of threats and so forth, she's all wrong here. And she would then, of course, also be on the side of arresting human knowledge to her medieval standards. And I can only presume that you're right, though, until we get clarification from Ms. Owen. Apparently, she would prefer a world in which millions of children got killed and paralyzed.
Yeah,
Woo.
and again, like healthcare especially is such an achievement, such a recent achievement. I mean, you mentioned polio. President Roosevelt suffered from polio, and he basically was he from the disease. He basically suffered for life.
Yes.
You could,
Paralyzed. He couldn't
yeah,
walk for the rest
paralyzed,
of his
right?
life.
I think there is a story about the son. I think it was the son of Calvin Coolidge. He was playing tennis, I think, like next to White House. He hurt himself in some way. He got an infection and died. And this is
Right.
like, a son of the
They didn't
most
have
powerful. Yeah,
antibiotics weren't widely used until the late 1940s. Mid to late 1940s, antibiotics were being introduced to the world. So yeah, if you got an infection, you either survived it somehow or you just died because they didn't have antibiotics.
yeah, and again, yeah, that brings me to the point I made at the start. She is ultimately like anti-man, like anti-progress, like denying the achievement of modern medicine. I mean, she is really a medievalist. She
Look,
really
science is
is.
just a cult. It's a religious way of looking at things. She's convinced that science is no more than just a religion she happens to disagree with. And so you can, oh yeah, you can bring out all this stuff about technology and medicine and how it's enhanced and saved human lives and stuff. She's unimpressed because it's just this science cult. And okay, if we're saving if we're saving lives with a polio vaccine, then she's unimpressed by this science cult. No, she's that far gone, ladies and gentlemen. It's reached a point where I think there may be something psychological going on. We've said it before on this show, but when you've reached that point of being just a medieval enemy of science as such, which is clearly the point she's reached, in the 21st century, where the evidence is that clear, obvious, accessible, and all around us, she is lost touch with reality in a fundamental way.
Yeah, I think once you start divorcing yourself from reality that much, yeah, I think it starts messing with you. Like, yeah, once you start believing that, yeah, basically reality, in a sense, you cannot find any truth in reality, then yeah, anything can go. And yeah, I think it can really mess with your head. Like once you really get to that point. But yeah, I think we've talked about Candace more than enough.
Mm.
Thank you, Bonnie, for your super chat. Someone in the chat is asking, can she be sued for hate speech? Not in the US. It's not a hate speech is
Thank
not a
goodness
thing
there's
there.
no hate speech exception. The Supreme Court has never recognized a hate speech exception to the First Amendment. The First Amendment allows you to offend people. That's as simple as I can say it. Words are not, or words are words. Physical force is physical force. The two are very different. Until your words actually begin to incite or threaten physical force, they are perfectly legal. Okay, or they cause physical or provable economic harm because of a lie, say. There is an objective physical kind of standard to when words ever can even be part of something the government can enforce. Fortunately, in America, we have a First Amendment, and whatever the vice presidential nominee, Mr. Walz, says, the governor of Minnesota, there is no First Amendment exception for misinformation or hate speech. The truth to you might not be the truth to someone else. Free speech means the right to misinform people, even. Only under certain narrow circumstances are even lies legally actionable in the United States. So, no, she can't be prosecuted, nor would I advocate a world in which, however anti-scientific, anti-reason, anti-Semitic, bizarre her statements turn out to be, that is not a basis for shutting down her free speech. We can't rip out her tongue as she would obviously rip out the tongues of her own critics. No.
Yeah, and you actually by mentioning the Kamala Harris Tim Walz ticket, you actually reminded me that if they win, it's gonna be a catastrophe for apostrophizing because it's Kamala Harris's and Tim Walz's. But as for hopefully we'll talk about. I mean, U.S. election is coming up soon, so we'll talk about it
A couple of months
soon.
away.
But that's enough for today's episode. Talking about Candice. We should be back tomorrow with another episode of the Daily Objective and the reality show Extra. Also, someone in the chat says, Daniel, are you a Jew? I guess we'll have to find out another day. Until then, bye bye.
Bye bye.